Hey everybody, this is Gregory from DApp University, and today I'm going to show you how to build a DApp, a decentralized application that supports image uploads with IPFS and Ethereum. So what we're going to do is build a DApp that allows you to upload an image to IPFS and then store this IPFS reference on the Ethereum blockchain. And really this could be any file. I've just chosen to do images. And this is something that you can apply to, any DApp that would want to, support decentralized file storage. So I'm going to show you how to do that today and how to get started with that so you can integrate that into your other dApps. And I'm making this video because I created a video on this channel already about how to store your client-side assets for your decentralized application on IPFS. And people really liked that video, so I thought I would create a new one to show you how to support decentralized file uploads, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So be sure to check out that other IPFS video where I show you how to create your client-side assets on IPFS if you haven't already. And you can also see here, if you haven't seen the other videos on my channel yet, here on my Twitter, this is an example of a 2-hour tutorial where I show you how to build your first decentralized application step by step. So you can check that video out, and you can also follow me on Twitter for daily updates. And one more thing, I haven't really mentioned this much on my channel yet, but I do have a new website at dappuniversity.com where I've got several kind of cool things. I've got a link here for a free download. It's just dappuniversity.com free download, where you can actually download the video files for some of my longer tutorials, and are all broken down by section. So you just subscribe to my email list, and I'll be kind of giving you guys updates about some new courses that I'm putting out. And in the meantime, you'll get free download links to these, about 10 hours worth of content. And I'll be updating this, as I add more videos. So you can also see that I've got some longer articles that show you some more step-by-step instructions about how to build these tutorials. So you can also check that out on the website. But enough of that. On to the tutorial. So yeah, what we're going to be building today is an IPFS DApp with Ethereum. And I'm going to be, kind of live coding this thing. So we'll see how far we get today. And this will probably turn into a mini series. It'll be a couple of videos. I'm not sure how long yet. We'll just kind of start today and see how far we get. And I'll get to a logical stopping point, and we'll save it for the next video. So be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications with the bell below so that you can see that next video in the mini series when it comes out. All right, so let's take a look at the UI for the project that we're going to be building today. This is a little mock-up that shows, the client-side app that we're going to be building. This is essentially, it's pretty simple. We've got a form here that you can, choose a file that you want to upload, and it's going to be an image, and we'll submit the image, and whenever, the image has posted to IPFS and stored on the blockchain, we'll see the image here. And we'll be able to change this, and yeah, that'll be where we'll start today. All right, now that's an overview of what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to kill my camera so that I can give you more screen real estate to focus on the tutorial part of this video. So let's jump in and start programming. Also, really quickly, just an overview of the kind of things that we're going to be using in this tutorial. IPFS is the first thing, and if you're not familiar with IPFS already, it's a decentralized sort of distributed way of storing files. So, IPFS has a network of nodes, kind of like the blockchain, where you can store files. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is upload some images to IPFS, and we are going to store a reference to those images on the blockchain. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to write a smart contract that's going to store the IPFS hash, which is really just the file location on IPFS. And, we're going to write this smart contract and, develop a little client-side website that's going to talk to it and is going to allow us to, upload the file to IPFS and store it to the blockchain. And we're going to write that smart contract and build the client-side website with the Truffle framework, which is just a framework that allows you to build decentralized applications on Ethereum. Also, we're going to use the Solidity programming language with the smart contract. So if you're not familiar with that, you can take a look over this. And also, I go over a lot of these dependencies on how to, set up IPFS, set up, Truffle, set up Solidity, all those kinds of things on your development environment in some of my previous videos. So I'm not going to belabor that in this one. But, you can check out this two-hour tutorial where I show you kind of step-by-step how to set up the dependencies for your projects. And you can also check out my other IPFS video to kind of get a little more in-depth view of what IPFS is doing. So be sure to check those out. All right, now on to the code. All right, so the first thing we want to do is create a project directory for the DApp that we're going to build, and I'm just going to call this let's see, IPFS image uploader. And once we created this directory, we will also, CD inside of it. All right. And instead of, just building all this stuff out from scratch, I'm going to use a Truffle box to get us started. So again, Truffle is a framework that allows us to build decentralized applications on Ethereum. And Truffle also has these things called boxes, which are, just packages of boilerplate code that allow you to do things without having to, write everything yourself. And the Truffle box that I want to use today is called the React Truffle box. So I'm going to actually experiment writing this client-side application that's going to allow us to upload images with React.js. And in some of my previous tutorials, I've done mostly just vanilla JavaScript. So leave a comment down in the comment section below to tell me, whether or not you like seeing things done with React and ES6 and kind of, some more modern ways of writing JavaScript. But if this totally loses you, then yeah, also let me know so that I can kind of get some feedback on what I should do for future tutorials. So I'm going to unbox this like this. So do Truffle, unbox, React. That's just how we install this Truffle box. And it's going to download all of the contents and set this up. And also, while this is downloading the files and opening the package, I'm going to start Ganache. So if you're not familiar with Ganache, Ganache is kind of the easiest way to run a private, local blockchain on your machine. It's got a nice UI. You kind of get 10 accounts for free with some fake ether. And yeah, this is how I'm going to, mostly connect to the blockchain in my tutorials. So now that Ganache is running, you've got a local blockchain running. And this is going to give us a way to deploy our smart contract. And it's going to give us a blockchain to connect to whenever we want to store the IPFS hash on the blockchain. So now that that's running, I'm going to minimize that. And let's check on our download here. Still setting up. All right, now that that's downloaded, let's go ahead and kind of open this directory in Sublime Text to see what we downloaded. I'm going to do this with the symlink. Some people have asked me what this is. This is just a symlink or kind of like a shortcut in the terminal to open the current directory with Sublime Text. Subl is the symlink, and the dot is just the name of the current directory. So I'm going to open that. And let's see here. So, if you've seen my other tutorials, you've seen, this project structure should look pretty familiar to you from the other Truffle projects. But you'll notice that we've already got a smart contract in here called Simple Storage. And this is what we're going to use as the basis for, storing the IPFS reference, the IPFS hash on the blockchain. This is the smart contract that we use, and we'll modify this momentarily. And you'll also see in the source directory, we've got, some React.js components already wired up for us. So what we're going to do is use this as boilerplate code to kind of get started. We'll just kind of modify this for our own purposes and build out the image uploader. So that's a good starting place. All right, so let's minimize all this for now and go back to our terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and initialize a new Git repository like this. All right. But before I add all the files, I'm going to create a git ignore file to ignore the node modules. I don't want to commit those to source. So let's do touch git ignore. All right. And that's going to create a new file for us to tell Git which files we don't want to commit. And I'm going to, I'll do it in Sublime Text. So I'll open this in Sublime Text, and we'll ignore the git ignore file. And we'll also ignore node modules. All right, let's save that. Say git status, and I'm going to add everything, and I'm going to commit, and we'll say unbox truffle unbox react. All right, so now what we want to do is connect our smart contract and our truffle project to the blockchain. So the first thing we need to do is update the network configuration file inside of Truffle. So there's two files here. There's truffle.js and truffle-config.js. It's confusing that there are two files here, but depending on which operating system you're on, you'll want to modify a different one. So if you're on Mac or Linux, you want to modify the truffle.js file. If you're on Windows, you want to modify the truffle-config.js. It does that on Windows because there's a naming conflict with the truffle executable. So if you're in your terminal and you type your truffle, Windows has a hard time just distinguishing between a file name and an executable here. So just do this on Windows, do this on Mac or Linux. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy and paste some network configuration from another project. I'll just copy this here, and I'll just paste this in. So what we're going to do is fill this in, this JavaScript object, and fill out the network. This will be our development network. This will just be localhost and port 7545. And what you want to do is just confirm that that's the same port as whatever RPC instance you're using for your blockchain. In this case, we're using Ganache, which is running on port 7545 for localhost. And that's the same port that we want to do here. And you want to make sure that you can match any network ID. All right, so save that, and let's go to our smart contract. So like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on the Solidity portion of this tutorial, but so we're going to, basically use this simple storage contract that was provided for us, for free with this Truffle box as sort of the basis for the storage that we're going to use in this IPFS, file uploader. And I want to also lock the Solidity version while we're here to avoid any kind of conflicts for, future versions. Of this tutorial, like if Truffle keeps getting updated and Solidity getting updated, I don't want this caret here, because this caret is going to say to use any, the caret's going to specify this is the minimum version of Solidity, and I want to use this exact version of Solidity. So let's check to see which, Solidity version we want to use. We do that like this. We just say, I believe it's Truffle version. And let's just see what it says. So see, we're using Truffle version 4.1.11, and this comes with Solidity version 4.2.42. Sorry, 4.2. Excuse me, 0.4.24. So I'm going to lock this here, and I'm going to take the caret away to specify the version. and we'll paste in the version that's in our terminal. All right, so that should avoid any conflicts with any future versions of Truffle or any future upgrades when you're trying to follow along with this tutorial. You can always go in and just check the version and lock it that way. So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and modify this contract a little bit. We can keep this as simple storage, but let's take a look here. Really quickly. So what this is doing is this has no constructor function. It just has two basic functions, one to set a value and one to get a value. And this set function, what it does is accepts a variable, and this local variable is assigned to a state variable. And the state variable is this line here. We declare it by declaring the data type and the name of the variable. And state variables and Solidity and smart contracts are just ways of writing data to the blockchain. So anytime a state variable is updated here, it updates the contract state, which also writes data to the blockchain. And anytime we read a state variable, likewise with this get function, it will return data from the blockchain. And so in this case, this is going to be a very simple tutorial where we are just reading and writing, the value of one single state variable on the blockchain. And, here they're calling it stored data. But to be more explicit, we'll call it IPFS hash. All right. And also, this is not going to be a number. That's what uint means. Uint is an unsigned integer, which basically means an integer without a minus in front of it. So a positive integer. A signed integer would be plus or minus than the integer, but this is just the integer value by itself. So instead of an unsigned integer, we want to use a string. All right, and the string is just going to represent the hash of the file on IPFS, and the IPFS hash is really just like an encrypted location of the file, and that's what we'll use. So we can just read a file from IPFS by predictably building the IPFS URL and appending the hash, and that will return the file that we're looking for. All right, so let's save this. We'll make sure that everything's working. Just make sure that Ganache is running. It's running. We've got all our accounts here. And I'm going to migrate this contract, and we'll just kind of check to see that our network configuration was configured properly and that our contract compiles correctly. So we'll do truffle migrate. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it the reset flag, just to be safe. All right, so it looks like it worked. All right, you'll see this warning here. Defining constructors with the same name of the contract is deprecated. You'll probably see some warnings here. This is from the migrations file, like this right here. I'll bring this up. Solidity is changing a lot. And in some of my previous tutorials, I showed you how to write a constructor function in Solidity where you write a function that's the same name as the contract, like migrations and migrations. But really now you just call this constructor. So I could change this, but I'm not going to. This is just a warning, and it's not an error, so I'm just going to ignore it for now. All right, so let's look at the next thing. Well, actually, let's go ahead and just commit this. I'll clear and get status, see what we changed. And I'm going to commit all this. Let's say updates. I'll say compiles, updates, storage contract. All right. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and get started with our configuring IPFS. So I think what I'm going to do is try to make things as simple as possible. So my previous IPFS video, I showed you how to, run your own IPFS node and add all of, your client-side assets to IPFS. And I might, do that again. I might, optimize this implementation by showing you how to do it with your node, but I want to get you started fast. I don't want to, go over every little detail at the moment. So what we're going to do is actually connect to basically an IPFS node instance with something called Infura. So Infura is, some decentralized infrastructure. They host a lot of Ethereum nodes. They host IPFS nodes. If you're using MetaMask and you're connecting to, the Ethereum network, if you just select this, you're probably connecting with Infura. So yeah, basically, they use an RPC protocol like you'd be using to connect to your, any remote Ethereum node. And they run a lot of the infrastructure and the Ethereum ecosystem, and they allow you to connect to IPFS without having to run your own IPFS node. And that's exactly what they do for Ethereum, right? Like if you were going to download, if you're going to run Geth or Parity, and you were going to run your own Ethereum node, you'd have to download all of the blockchain data, keep it in sync, and it could be, pretty cumbersome. So what this does is allow you to connect to Ethereum node remotely without having to run one yourself, and it also allows you to connect to an IPFS node without having to run one yourself. And that's what we'll get started off with today. So you can check out Infura more on the website, or you can read about this introduction to IPFS on their GitHub. I'll leave that to you as some homework. All right, so let's go back to our project. And let's kind of jump into building a client-side application and setting up IPFS. So let's see here. First thing we'll do is let's install the node package that we want to use for IPFS. We'll do that like this. We'll do npm install IPFS API. And this is the node package that's going to allow us to create an instance of the IPFS API inside of our application, and to be able to read and write files from IPFS all within the JavaScript React app that we're going to be creating in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and open this in Sublime Text again. I'll just go over here, and let's kind of show where I'm going to configure this. So we'll go to source, you can see our app.js file. This is going to be the top level file where we have our app component, and it will, this is where we'll write most of the application, and actually all the application. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new file here called IPFS. I created this new file in this same directory, in the source directory. And I'm going to, just create some configuration that's going to allow us to connect to IPFS inside this app.js file. And I'll do that like this. So IPFS, we're going to basically pull this in, this IPFS API that we just installed with Node, and we're going to assign it to a constant. This will be a new instance of the API, and we're going to set up the host as ipfs.infura.io. And the port is going to be 5001. This is typically the the port that IPFS runs on. Like if you're going to run this locally, we could potentially change this to localhost. And I might show you how to do that in a later video if y'all are interested. And it's going to be SSL encrypted protocol. So I'll save this, and I'll go ahead and pull this into app.js like this. I'll say import IPFS from IPFS. All right, I'll save that. Okay, so now that's going to give us access to IPFS inside this app.js file. All right, So now that, that's pretty much how easy it is to get started with IPFS if you're not, wanting to run your own local node, if you just want to connect to a remote node. That gets you up and started fast. So let's go ahead and start a little, project server so that we can, see the boilerplate code that was provided for us. And yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is going to throw an error here because we changed this contract, but let's just see what happens. So I'm going to open a new tab here. And I'll do npm run start, I believe. All right. So I'll pull down the project here. All right. So this is trying to do a MetaMask transaction, and that's because it's trying to set this default value here in the boilerplate code. So we're going to ignore this. Like I said, we got a lot of this code for free whenever we unbox the truffle box, and we're going to kind of move a lot of this out of here. But I just wanted to make sure that, we could start this correctly without any issues. I'm going to reject this transaction. All right, so we got a warning here. IPFS is defined but never used. That's just a linter error warning. It's not really an error. All right, so we denied the transaction, and Web3 was injected. Okay, so we've got this set up. We've got the server running, and we can see the boilerplate code that was provided by the truffle box. We've got some HTML markup here that says we have a truffle box. We're good to go. Your truffle box is installed and ready. And this is your smart contract example. So it's talking to the smart contract that we created on the back end, which is nice. And yeah, we've got everything set up, and this is kind of a successful smoke test. So let's kind of go in here and yeah, kind of take a look at what we did. Well, actually, you know what? That's been a pretty good overview of getting started with this and getting started with IPFS. I'm actually going to kind of call it on this video for today. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to check out the next video in this series where I will show you how to get started with a file uploader. We will add a form here that's going to allow us to add the file to IPFS and then post it. And once it's posted to IPFS, we'll store a reference to that on the blockchain. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the next video when it comes out, and we will continue building on with this project. And until next time, thanks for watching DApp University.